Welcome back to Star Wars Shovelware, my name's Luke, and in today's indie game review we're going to be taking a look at Galacticon on the Nintendo Switch, and this is one that's really trying to tap into that classic 80s arcade cabinet vibe in terms of both its visual aesthetics and gameplay, simply tasking the player with scoring as many points as they can as they work their way through progressively more difficult levels. But does it hit the mark and offer an addictive gameplay loop, and is it worth your cash? Well, hit that like button, subscribe for future reviews and Switch related content, and let's find out. So compared with some of the other arcade style games that I've played, Galacticon actually makes a bit more of an effort with its storyline, and there's at least a little bit of lore which goes alongside gameplay. Set in some kind of distant future, the game sees humanity becoming too big for its boots, utilising its technology and biochemical advancements to enslave all other species in the galaxy, and so the Interstellar Council convene to decide how to deal with them. Left with very few options, they decide to invoke the Galacticon, a legendary and deadly half-god half-machine creature, and they send it off to deal with the humans and save the galaxy, praying that all goes well. Now, aside from a few cool images in the game's intro, very little else is actually mentioned about the storyline. After beating the game's first boss, you're told that the humans are now even more powerful and that you must continue the fight, but that's about it, which to be honest is more than I expected from an arcade game. When it comes down to it though, this short snippet of lore is essentially just there to set the scene, and it succeeds in doing so, explaining who the player is, who they're fighting against, and who the little coloured creatures are that you have to rescue. Now, to me, a good arcade game has to have three things. Firstly, gameplay needs to be simple enough that you can just pick up and play it and understand most of the gameplay mechanics without being told them. Secondly, it needs to be endlessly replayable. There has to be some reason for you to want to keep on playing, which in most cases is a high scoreboard. Finally, its difficulty has to be balanced, and its difficulty curve needs to be gradual. For instance, there's no point having a huge difficulty spike on the third level if the game has 99 levels, but it also needs to become progressively more difficult and have a way to improve on your score through skillful gameplay. After playing Galacticon for around 3 or 4 hours, I can thankfully say that for the most part it meets all of these criteria. Now, as you'd expect, this is your traditional high score chasing affair, and when it comes to the mechanics, they've kept things simple whilst still adding a little bit of depth to the scoring mechanics. In terms of its controls, you move your character around with the left thumbstick, fire manually with the B button, or turn on auto fire with the tap of the X button, and you're able to use the Y button as an alternative means to fly upwards, which does have its application in some levels. But that's it, that's the entirety of the control scheme, and it's incredibly simple, just like the classics. Now, turning to the gameplay, the objective in each level is to fill up the escape pods at the bottom of the screen, and you do this by collecting the little coloured men which wander back and forth on platforms, or have been captured in prison ships which must first be destroyed. You're able to carry up to 4 of these little dudes at once, though if they accidentally touch an enemy they'll be destroyed, and to deposit them into the ship you simply need to land at the centre of them. Where things get a little bit more complicated is with the scoring of them, as placing certain combinations together will see some of the species killing others, which awards no points for that particular ship. And so, just to be safe, I opted to fill my ships up with a single colour, which coincidentally offers the most amount of points. Now, as you fly around the place attempting to rescue the little dudes, enemies will constantly spawn in, either appearing at random positions in the arena, or like the prison ship, appearing on one side of the screen and disappearing when they reach the other side. Each of the game's levels features its own unique enemies for you to tackle, which for the most part fly around aimlessly with different movement patterns, causing more of an obstruction than anything else, though there are the odd enemy which gravitate towards you, and the ones which enter from the sides usually fire projectiles at you. All of the enemies though can be defeated with a single shot, and the game is all about quick reactions, skillful movement, and using the screen wrap mechanic to your advantage. Every 10 seconds or so, you'll also have a random power-up which spawns into the arena, which can really help you out, and contains things like shields, extra lives, double shots, or bombs which kill everything on screen, and I found it's best to grab these right away, as only one can exist in the arena at any one time. Now, like the enemies, the arenas themselves are all slightly different, and a few of them contain environmental hazards for you to be aware of, and after filling all of your ships you'll fly upwards and enter into a short minigame sequence, whose primary mechanics see you dodging your way past asteroids until you reach your ship. Again, these feature a variety of formats, some more challenging than others, and in general I thought the game had a decent amount of variety to its levels and enemies. After playing my way through 8 different levels, my final minigame actually featured a boss, which was essentially a brain in a flying saucer, and I thought this was going to be a bit more challenging than it was. But after defeating this boss, the level loop then began again, but this time round levels featured a mixture of different enemies, which proved significantly more challenging, and I didn't actually make it to the next boss, but I assume this is how the gameplay loop proceeds from then onwards. Now, my overall gameplay experience with Galacticon was a very positive one. I found that the basic mechanics were easy enough to get to grips with, its simplicity makes it accessible to all, and while the game itself offers a reasonable level of challenge, the first 8 levels or so shouldn't prove too difficult to get through, and I successfully completed my first loop in around 10 tries. When it comes to replayability, while you will be playing through the same sets of levels, there are opportunities to improve on your score by ferrying more passengers at once or completing levels in faster times, and the game does have a high score leaderboard, but unfortunately you have to scan a code it presents to you and submit it via your mobile for your score to appear on it. You do, however, unlock a few secret hints by doing this, and the developers hold competitions every once in a while, but I can see it being a bit too much of a faff for most people to bother with it. All in all though, Galacticon is a great little arcade game, and a perfect time filler title for when you're on the go. I do have a few minor gripes with it, such as enemies spawning directly on top of you, or the way in which you can exploit the extra life power up to make progression a lot easier, but overall a decent game all round, and an incredibly addictive one at that. So visually, the game has gone for that minimalistic neon-infused retro aesthetic, a defining feature of the early 80s arcade era, and I'd say that the characters and enemy sprites are pretty simplistic, but still have a little more detail than you'd find in the true classics, so in this sense there's a bit of a blend between the old and the new with this one. On the audio side of things, again the sound effects are kept pretty simple, but they do a great job of replicating that classic arcade sound, like they could have been ripped straight from any arcade cabinet of that era. And for the most part, we don't actually get any music apart from the end of level ascents and the odd jingle here and there, but these also sound really good. Overall, a great job with the audio and visuals in this one. So from what I experienced, the game performs perfectly fine on the Switch, and I didn't notice any frame rate issues even when things got a bit hectic on screen. When it comes to issues, again not really much to report here. Like I said, the whole coloured passenger thing did have me a little confused to start with, and I had a few issues with enemies spawning directly beneath me, but other than this, I think that the game could have done with a few more bosses, and maybe even a hard mode for those players looking for more of a challenge from the get-go. When all said and done though, I thought Galacticon was a great little arcade game. Its gameplay was incredibly solid, and to me it's a shining example of a modern arcade game done right, and for that reason, when it comes to my own personal rating, I'm going to be giving Galacticon 5 out of 5 stars. If you're looking for a hit of that addictive arcade goodness at a very reasonable price point, then I'd say look no further than Galacticon. And so that about does it for this review of Galacticon on the Nintendo Switch. As always, if you enjoyed it, make sure to hit that like button, let me know your thoughts and opinions on the game down in the comments section below, and if you watch my content regularly but are not yet subscribed, then please consider doing so. For now though, I just want to thank you all once again for watching, And until next time, take care of yourselves and game on.